Before my father died, he finally broke his silence. He told me a story. It wasn't a war story he ever told his friends over a beer, not one he shared with the other soldiers in his unit, and certainly not something he ever wrote down in official reports. He told it to me quietly, late at night, in the hospital room. Outside, the rain was hitting the window, but inside, his voice was steady. He looked at me with a seriousness in his eyes that told me this wasn't just a memory of war. It was a secret he had carried for 50 years, and once you hear it, you'll understand why he stayed silent for so long. This happened during the Vietnam War in the late 1960s. My father was part of a specialized reconnaissance team operating deep inside the dense jungles near the Cambodian border. It wasn't a big unit, just him, one other American soldier, and 5 CIDG strikers. These were local South Vietnamese villagers, men who knew the land, men trained to fight and trained to disappear into the forest. Their mission was dangerous, but routine for them. They were planting seismic ground sensors along enemy trail networks. Sensors meant to detect the vibrations of movement, footsteps, heavy supply trucks, entire patrols moving south.
They were already 2 days into the mission. If you've never been to that part of the world, you can't imagine the heat. It was a heavy, wet heat that pressed against your lungs. The jungle around them was thick, a green wall so dense that sunlight barely reached the muddy ground. Every step was a struggle against vines, thorns, and the constant fear of what lay hidden in the shadows. At one point, my father and 2 of the CIDG strikers split off from the main group. They were sent to watch a nearby trail intersection, a place known for heavy enemy movement. They found a spot in the thick brush, about 20 yards from the path, and settled in to wait. That day, the jungle felt wrong. Anyone who has spent time in combat knows the sound of the jungle. It's never quiet. There's always the buzzing of insects, the call of birds, the rustling of monkeys in the canopy. But as the afternoon wore on, the noise began to fade until there was nothing. Silence, a heavy, suffocating silence. The birds stopped singing. The insects stopped buzzing. It was as if nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. They hid in the brush, watching the intersection. 3 hours passed. Then 4. My father's legs were cramping. The sweat was stinging his eyes, but he didn't move. He checked his watch. The sun was starting to dip lower. Shadows were getting longer. Eventually, my father started thinking, should they move farther down the trail, or should they pull back and regroup with the main unit? The radio was silent.
He had a decision to make. Before making the call, he decided to check the trail one last time. He shifted his weight, gripping his M16 rifle. As he slowly leaned forward, parting the large fern leaves to get a better view, he froze. He saw someone lying beside the trail, just a few feet away from the open path. At first, his brain refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. It wasn't an enemy soldier. It wasn't one of his own men. The man was light-skinned black with high cheekbones. He wasn't wearing jungle fatigues. He was wearing a heavy blue wool uniform, brass buttons, high black boots, a wide-brimmed hat, a Union Cavalry uniform from the American Civil War, 100 years out of time. In the suffocating heat of Vietnam, this man should have been sweating. He should have been out of place, but he looked perfectly still. He was fully equipped for a war that ended a century ago. 2 heavy pistols tucked into his belt, a wooden Spencer repeating rifle resting across his chest, and at his hip, something strange. A short, curved wooden club, a Native American war club. My father couldn't breathe. He blinked, thinking it was a hallucination, heat stroke, exhaustion. But when he opened his eyes, the soldier was still there, solid, real. Then, slowly, the soldier turned his head. He didn't look at the trail. He looked directly at my father. Through the leaves, through the camouflage, he saw him. The man smiled. It wasn't a threatening smile. It wasn't a ghost trying to scare him. It was calm, peaceful, almost familiar, like seeing an old friend in a crowd. Then the soldier slowly raised one finger to his lips, shh, telling him to be silent. The gesture was slow, deliberate. After that, he slowly raised his hand and motioned my father back, pushing the air with his palm. Go back, move away. My father didn't question it. He was a rational man, a trained soldier. But in that moment, every instinct in his body, every hair on the back of his neck screamed one command: obey him.
He signaled his men behind him, using hand signs to tell them to stay low and retreat. He slowly, inch by inch, slipped back into the dense jungle. And at the exact same moment, the Union soldier did the same on the opposite side of the trail. He didn't stand up. He just faded back into the shadows, vanishing into the green. My father held his breath. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a drum. 5 seconds passed, 10 seconds, and then the ground began to vibrate. The jungle exploded with movement. The lead element of a massive North Vietnamese army unit walked into the intersection. First, the point man, then the officers, then the heavy weapons. Soldier after soldier, my father pressed his face into the mud, praying they wouldn't look right. He estimated 70, maybe 80 enemy soldiers. They were heavily armed. Automatic rifles, light machine guns, and rocket-propelled grenade launchers strapped to their backs. They passed through the intersection, less than 30 feet from where my father had almost stepped out. The smell of their tobacco smoke drifted into the brush. He could hear the clicking of their equipment, the sound of their boots on the soft earth. If my father had stepped onto that trail, if he had ignored the warning, there would have been no fight, no chance to radio for help. He and his 2 men would have been wiped out instantly. It took 10 minutes for the enemy column to pass. 10 minutes of pure terror. As soon as the jungle was quiet again, my father and his team moved, fast, quiet, disciplined. They ran until their lungs burned. They rejoined the rest of the patrol and called in the coordinates of the enemy movement. But my father said nothing about the soldier in the blue uniform. He never wrote it in a report. He never told his commanding officer. Who would believe him? He kept that secret, locked away for decades. The only person he ever told before me was his grandmother. He told her in the 1970s when she was on her deathbed. She was a very old woman then, holding on to the last threads of life. My father sat by her side and whispered the story of the man in the jungle, the blue uniform, the Spencer rifle, the war club. When he finished the story, she smiled. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't look surprised. She simply squeezed his hand and said, "You saw old Red Tom." My father looked at her, confused. "Who?" "Red Tom," she whispered. "My grandfather, your great-great-great-grandfather." She told him the history he had never known. Red Tom was a mixed-race man, half black, half Creek Indian, a free man. During the Civil War, he didn't just fight, he was a scout for the Union Army. And later, he served with the U.S. Cavalry, patrolling the vast American West. She described him perfectly. He refused to carry a saber like the other soldiers. Instead, he was known for carrying 2 pistols, a Spencer repeating rifle, and a traditional Creek war club carved from ironwood, the exact weapons my father saw that day in the jungles of Vietnam. Thousands of miles away from home and 100 years after Red Tom had died. My father sat in silence, realizing that the face he had seen, the smile that looked so familiar, was the face of his own blood. My father never saw the soldier again. He survived the war. He came home. He raised a family. But he believed one thing until the day he took his last breath. He believed that love doesn't end with death. He believed that some bonds are stronger than time and stronger than war. And he believed that some warriors never stop watching the trail, protecting their own. So if you are ever in a dark place and you get a feeling to stop, to wait, or to turn back, listen to it. It might just be your guardian watching the trail ahead.